Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a few minutes of fun. We're carrying on with our easy embossing powder playtime experiments, and really some direct experiments today. We're playing with embossing powders over texture, and we'll use some plain texture paste, and we're also going to use some Crackle. This was a technique that Tim Holtz and his team first shared. I think it may have been Stacey who did it first. I can't be entirely sure anymore, but using embossing powder over Crackle. So there are a couple of things to bear in mind with this, but we're going to crack straight in. There you go. I think we'll use, I'm quite fond of this one at the moment for some reason. It seems to be the thing I want to use. So with Crackle paste, the absolutely key thing is you can't heat emboss it until the Crackle paste has done its crackling. So you'll need somewhere to set it aside to let that happen before you crackle. With texture paste, we're going to do an experiment to see whether that's entirely necessary or not. But you won't get crackles if you don't let it crackle before you heat emboss. But we're still going to do a direct comparison with this, because on one of these two, I'm going to add opaque embossing powders, and on the other, I'm going to use transparent distressed glazes, so that we'll get a look at a direct comparison between the two. So your first port of call is your Crackle paste. I generally use a palette knife, as you know, to apply my Crackle paste, and I'm going to put it through. I think I might put it through for basically the whole piece of card. We'll leave a little bit around the edging for space, for a sense of lightness and imperfection, which, as you know, I'm fully in favour of. So once you've got your Crackle paste on there, let's make this, well, I've got this custom mix from our first week of easy embossing powder playtime. If you haven't seen that, I will be linking below, or you can just check out the playlist. I'm going to have all these on a playlist, so you can just make your way through them. I'm not going to wash that straight away because I'm about to use it immediately again. So over this, I'm going to put Opaque. These were the stupendous powders, and I ended up with two of them mixed together. It really doesn't want to come off. I thought that was just the first time when I opened it. So this is already a mix of two different colours of powder. But what I might also do is add something else to the mix. So let's see. This is also Opaque. This is Seth's Aegean Sea. So I might do a few little pinches of that and add that to the mix here. And as I say, this is Crackle paste. We absolutely cannot heat emboss it until it's done its crackling. So once I've got this on the go, that's enough. Oops, and there goes some down the side. Well, that, no, there is some of the other there. There we go. So I'm just going to come from underneath and just allow that powder to really tackle every last little bit of paste on here. So I'm fully covered. That's Crackle paste under there, and I'm going to set this aside to do its crackling business. This I'm going to add to my custom mix, so I've now got Aegean Sea going on in here as well. And I think overall that's going to be quite a pretty powder when we're done. It's already a pretty powder. Grand. So I'm now going to put some Crackle paste straight onto this one. Exact same game, but we're going to use transparent distress embossing glazes on this one. So let's get the Crackle on. Nice easy movement. It is like spreading peanut butter or cream cheese, depending on which is your favorite. You can you can imagine your spread of choice. Personally, I'd probably take Crackle paste over any of them. Not to eat, obviously. There we go. So that's our stenciling again. I'm going to give that a little spritz of water, just in case it starts to set before I get it into the water. Might try putting that back in there, but because it's around the edge, the chances are it's going to dry out before I get to it. But we'll see. It's worth hanging on to. So for this, I'm going to go with blues and greens again, so that we've got the closest possible comparison. Got some Salvaged Patina here. That can go on. You can tip or pinch. I'm just going to put the paper underneath before I forget. I might tip a little bit, so I've got a little more of the Salvaged Patina going on. Patina, if you're a UK English speaker, but you know, what the heck. And these I'm also going to add to my custom powder. Absolutely fine with having a mix of translucent and opaque powders in there. This is Speckled Egg, so that gives us a slightly different colour. And then I've got some bundled sage. So yes, it is. It's a sudden thought that it wasn't embossing glaze. So a few bits of green in there. Should have put a bit of green in the other, shouldn't I? I've got that green with the... And then what else have we got? Oh, maybe just a little bit of Uncharted Mariner, because that'll give us a... Oh, okay, quite a lot of Uncharted Mariner. That escaped from the side of the pot. Not to worry. So again, I'm going to just tickle that around with a gentle tap from underneath. That was a tip of Tim's to get it to travel, and just make sure you've got all your available paste has got something on it. And then again, this is Crackle paste under here, so I absolutely have to let it do its crackling thing before I heat emboss. Let's put this powder into our custom mix. And now we're going to have some translucence in there as well. Can't wait to try that one out on something. Probably some botanicals, let's face it, is what it's going to be. I'll have a little clear up, going to rinse my stencil, and then we'll come back and do a little bit of regular texture paste with a different kind of experiment to see whether you really, really have to wait with that one. I haven't been to clean yet. Instead, I thought I'd see if I could get any texture off this. So I just laid the stencil down. There was a little bit of texture paste left on it and scraped through what I could see on it. I'm going to do one more in a similar way. Just going to flip over this time. The first one I didn't flip. First one had enough on the surface that I thought it might scrape on. But this is just going to give us, it won't crackle. I'm fairly sure it won't crackle. There isn't enough of it. But it will give us a texture and a resist when we add some ink to that page. So no need to wash it all away. Oh, I've got two under there. Those, let's see if we can catch it in the light. Those are going to give us some fabulous texture results if and when we spritz or blend ink over them. Grand. Now I'm going to go and wash this stencil. My direct comparison experiment with the main texture paste, or regular texture paste, is going to be whether it makes a difference, whether you let it dry first and then heat emboss it, or what happens if you go with a direct heat emboss. Now, given I really like overheating my texture paste and letting it bubble and boil, my hope is that when you heat the texture paste before letting it set, you might get something along those lines, just some really funky textures, bubbling, boiling, with the embossing powder, I'm guessing, kind of making its way into the texture paste in a sort of more embedded way than if you let the texture paste set and then heat emboss. But we'll see. That's a sort of guess on my part. Until I actually do it, I don't know. This was one of the earlier Tim Holtz stencils, and for a long time it was an absolute favourite, and it hasn't been out for a while, so I am shopping my stash and using the good old distressed Harlequins. They do have quite a lot of detail to them, which really shows up when you use them with an ink. The paste slightly less so, but what I wanted was a good amount of surface for the powder to cling to, so I didn't want to do a really detailed stencil because that would only give us a little look at the results of the experiment, whereas this will give us a good old eyeball on the differences that you get between heat embossing while the texture paste is wet, heat embossing once it's dried. Oops, could have picked up that as well. Well, let's also do the thing I've just done, since I've got some paste here on the spatula. Is I'm just going to grab another of these pieces of card. These are some offcuts of smoothie card that Paper Artsy sent through. Just, I mean, pretty much for this exact kind of game, experimenting texture. And they also make really nice little sort of starting points for not quite cards, not quite. So there's a partial bit of texture paste, which might be quite fun to play with. And we'll maybe do one more. Same thing, using that card. Excuse me. Come out. Can't do it one-handed. And flip it over with a bit of water spritzed onto it. So I don't know how much we'll pick up, but it's worth grabbing what you can. So again, ooh, there's definitely something there. I see diamonds. That means I've got some kind of resist going on there, and I've got leftovers on there. So again, those I think I'll just set aside to play with another time. This, thinking I might as well just go with our mix, which now has translucent and opaque. I'm curious to see what wins. And I think I'm just going to put it on both, and one of them will heat straight away and one of them will save for later. So over it goes. Just need enough to catch on the texture paste. I don't need huge amounts. That might do it if I give it a little bounce around. And down into that corner. And a little bit on you. There we go. So that's got our custom mix on it, which is blending into a really nice, gentle, greeny blue turquoise. All of its own. Unique. Nobody else will have this particular mix, because even if you were to use the exact same powders I've got, you'd end up with them in different amounts. So I've now got my own completely unique embossing powder custom mix. Grand. I'm going to put that back in there. So one of these I'm going to set aside to set by itself. The other one we're going to emboss right now. I think we'll set you aside for later. There we go. Lid. Always put your lids on your embossing powder. I mean, this one is highly unlikely to fall over, but I might nudge it or bump into it and it might get overexcited and fall out. So I think, as per usual with this embossing series, I might start a little bit of music so you don't have to listen to the massive sound of the embossing tool. And yeah, I'm going to overheat this in the way that I like to overheat texture paste. It's going to have to happen because the powder needs to melt. be no surprise to you that I absolutely love all those bubbles and burst bubbles and delicious random blowings up of bubbles. I hope that all happened on camera as beautifully as it did for me in real life. There's a really lovely shimmer to that as it catches the light, but it is, I would say, definitely opaque. There are sort of some crystals in there that have got a slight difference. So now it's a question of waiting both for the Crackle paste to do its crackling and the other texture paste to set, and then we'll do a comparison between the two. In the meantime, I'm just going to throw a little bit of more regular texture paste, maybe through a couple of different stencils, just so I've had a play with a couple of different colours over the texture. And I think I might do that on some actual tags, because I quite like this large texture, this large flourish here, and that needs a bit more space to play. So maybe we'll do a trio of flourishes in different colours, but the first thing that needs doing is a proper wash of my Harlequins. Of course, you don't have to do this over a blank tag. You can also do it over a background that already exists. So here's one of the Distress Paint tags from a few weeks ago now. Not entirely sure when that was. So I think I'm going to keep working with the regular texture paste, because otherwise I'll just have to wait for Crackles to crack. So digging down into there. I might not do a complete flourish. Oops, that went underneath, not over the top. I'm going to kind of run a flourishy pattern diagonally down this tag, just to give it a bit of interest and detail. And I think I'm quite interested in digging out I believe I've got some pumice stone distress embossing glaze, which I think might make me quite happy against this turquoisey greyish background. So I'm just going to leave that there. No harm in that. It'll do a little bit of setting in the meantime. And then I've got a decision to make about whether to let it set or whether to dive straight in and let it be a bubbly emboss. I'm going to find the powder. Yep, here it is, Pumice Stone Distress Embossing Glaze. So I'm just going to peel that back. Ooh, that's good. I don't want to put water on this stencil yet because I want to use it again. So I'm going to move fairly rapidly. Get some... Oh, it seems to be my first go with it. That can't be true. There must be an open one somewhere, and this is my backup. I think we might be going for another custom mix here, because I would also really quite like to have a bit of Salvaged Patina in here. So again, just allowing those powders to mix on there. Initially, I thought I was just doing the pumice stone, so I tipped rather than pinching. So I've used quite a lot of powder on here when I didn't need quite as much. But, you know, it'll all come out in the wash, because now what I'm going to have is a grey-green mixture in my custom mix. And as you know, as a lover of grey, that's never going to be a problem for me. Oh, in fact, I think I've got another... Yeah, there is another custom mix on the go here, which has already got some greys in. So maybe I will preserve this greeny blue one. And I'm going to pop that in there. That one's nearly full. Must remember to use this custom mix. It's sitting right on the desk in front of me. Grand. That we'll set aside to set. And we'll try... Maybe we should do a metallic. Should do a metallic over some texture, shouldn't we? So with this, you're always going to be able to add inking once the embossing is done. So I'm going to go over, wow, although I have got another of those. I say that, but I think that could look really cool, couldn't it? With a metallic look over it as well. Let's go in a slightly different direction. So we use a little different part of the Flourish tag. Oops, that was a bit of a mess up. My texture paste is quite stiff because it's starting to set in the pot. I did get some of the black bands to go round my texture pastes, but I haven't applied them yet to my pots. They help preserve extra moisture in there if you're in a fairly dry climate, which, funnily enough, even though it rains a lot here, it is a dry climate in between because of the elevation. that is going to get some liquid platinum, I think is what I want on here, because it just has a magical shimmer to it. So this one I'm not going to put in the custom mix. I'm just going to do a single colour because the metallics are so magical just as they are. We'll do that. So we've now got, yeah, see, I had paste in between. I could try and do a little bit of a rescue job, try and scrape some of that up in between, but I think it's just, oh no, that's worked out okay. Let's try and grab a bit of that, just cleaning it up a little bit because of where I went under the stencil with my paste, because the paste was firmer than the stencil was. If you've got nice fluid paste or nice soft paste, I don't think you'll have that issue. It was purely because the paste was really quite set already in the pot. That'll do. It's giving me a bit more definition around what I've got going on. Goodo. Never panic. Never give up. I don't want that bit of texture paste in there, but the rest I'm fairly sure is just powder. So I'm good with putting it all back in there. And yeah, I think that might be enough for the Flourish stencil. So I will wash the Flourish stencil. I'll wash the Flourish stencil and come back and just put some texture paste on these last two tags, just because they're sitting here begging to be used. So I think I've always loved this stencil with these rather dramatic Gothic medieval patterns. So I think it's going to be this for the last couple of tags. Obviously, once this is in place, once the paste is set and we've heat embossed it, we'll be able to do kind of anything we like, ink-wise or paint-wise over the top, and these are going to resist like we were resisting with we've done resists with paint, with embossing powder, all kinds of resists on the channel. Just trying to make up my mind whether I want to stay with the blues and the greens and the greys. Yeah, I think so. Okay, I might do a mix. This could be fun. I'm going to do a mix with the pumice stone and the liquid platinum. No idea what that's going to do, but I'm going to give it a try. So regular texture paste again. I might go with I'm just wondering about using a grit paste just for fun, just to see what it gets us. Or I've got my paperazzi grunge paste here, also possible. So you absolutely don't have to have any particular paste. I'm also thinking you could definitely do this with a heavy duty medium, like the medium we use for gluing down, the acrylic medium, which is actually used for extending paint really, but works brilliantly as a glue. Would also work to grab embossing powder, no shadow of a doubt. In fact, maybe we should, except no, I want to keep it as glue. You could also use something like gesso. You could grab your powder with gesso, no difficulty about that. Well, let's do that since we're at it. This is not the thickest gesso, but it's not the thinnest gesso either. Spreads through the stencil really nicely, and it will absolutely grab the embossing powder, because the embossing powder will cling to any moisture you offer it. Ink, paste, gel, gesso, and as Tim Holtz demonstrated to us once upon a time, even to water droplets. If you get it on fast enough, you can add embossing powder to water droplets, maybe, yeah, and it will still stick. Did we do that last week in the resisting? Can't remember. There we go. So that moisture will absolutely grab hold. I'm going to, you know what I'm going to do, don't you? I'm going to take this tag that's sitting here, give this a gentle spritz of water, and I'm going to create a flipped version to which, as long as I move with reasonable rapidity, I will also be able to add some embossing powder. or I could just leave it to work as a gesso resist, which is another of my favourite things, and you'll get inkiness down in between into those shapes. I think I might leave it like that. I don't think I feel the need to give that embossing powder. I'll leave those as resist ones, but there's still plenty on here, so I'm going to do another scraping version through onto some card here, which will just pick me up sort of edges and fun things like that. Grand. Another little spritz of water, because I'm not going to get right to cleaning this, because I need to decide what powders I'm going to add to these gessoed textures. Yes, I was going to do grey and silver, wasn't I? So let's get some liquid platinum on, pinching. Oh, paper underneath helps. When you're catching powder, I'm thinking maybe some liquid platinum, like so. This is good. This is going to end up in the grey-green embossing mix again, isn't it? So there might be little hints and other great splotches of the silver, liquid platinum. I could catch that immediately, couldn't I? Look, there we go. So I've got my little bits of silver on, and I'm going to catch those. That's a good game. Now I'm going to add little bits of the pumice stone, and then maybe catch those. There we go. Yep, good, 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 good. Like so. And like so. And then with whatever's left to be caught, I'm going to go, what would it be? Salvaged patina. Oh, we haven't used the duck yet, have we? Might be quite nice to do that as a contrast to the metallic. So I'm just going to go with a bit of that. I might even put some salvaged patina in too. So let's let that do a little bit. Yeah, there are going to be some bits left, look. Take it off sideways so there's still some bits through the middle, onto which I can put some big, bold, bright, transparent salvaged patina, if I can find it. It's underneath my stencil. So anywhere that I can see still white gesso, I'm now just going to tip some of this and let it find its way to what will still grab hold of it. Let's take it for a little pat. So it won't go over the other where there's a solid hold. It will just grab hold of any remaining free bits of gesso. So that I should get really a rather nice variation look on that. And I think that that is enough of just being salvaged patina, that it can go straight back in the salvaged patina. Marvellous. Good, so I need to set all these aside to dry, or set. Let the texture pastes and the gesso dry and set. Ooh, a direct comparison would be to heat this now, wouldn't it? Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. We'll do one that is heated straight away, one that is heated later. That is already one of my favourite embossed backgrounds ever. I think I might need to do a little bit on the platinum there still, but otherwise I'm going to let this set and we'll come back for an heat embossing session on these crackles, which are curling up as they go. So I'm just going to give that a little straighten, set it aside again, and continue to let that dry and crack. And once it's done its cracking, we can hit it with the heat gun. We'll come back and have a look what happens if there's a difference between this one, which we've already heat embossed while the texture paste was wet, and this one, which we're allowing to set. We've also got comparisons between transparent and opaque going on, so lots to enjoy when we come back for the results. We're definitely ready for the final bit of heating. You can see, I think, that the crackle has crackled under there, and I'm going to take that as a signal that the other texture paste has also dried underneath wherever it is. So we are now free to get on and see how the comparison is. So these ones that we did while things were still wet, that's the one that went over gesso, and that's dried to a pretty flat surface. I mean, it's pretty perfect. So we'll see what happens to this one. This one that had the texture paste that we did the embossing while the texture paste was still wet really has that scrumptious bubbly texture to it. We're going to see, we're going to see what happens to this. Got a bit more distressing going on there now because some of that powder's come off. And then we've got these two, both of which have yet to be embossed, which have got various metallics with, that's the liquid platinum with the pumice stone, I believe. And that's liquid platinum with some, you'll need to go back and watch. I've forgotten already what it was that we had on there. In any case, I'm going to do some heating so that you don't have to listen to the blaring heat tool. I'll do a little bit of music over the top, but I'll probably just do you a crackle and maybe this one, because I think those two are going to be the interesting ones, and I'll finish those off by myself before we hone in for a close-up. Just give you a little shot at that Flourish as well. Is that the one we cleared out the mess from? No, that's the one we cleared out the mess from. So that's got the translucence on. So I think that must have been mostly pumice stone and Salvaged patina, and maybe there were a few trickles of the metallic. This one, as you saw, almost none of the bubbling that went on when we did it while the paste was still wet. So you've got that embossed surface catching the light, but a much flatter, sort of more perfect look. I'm still probably a fan of the texture. And there's the crackle fully embossed with the translucent embossing glazes. I'm going to get on now and do these other ones, and then I'll come back to talk about the results we've got. I've reached the metallic Flourish, and I just have to give you a shot at this because it's just magic as it happens. See what I mean? From that dull grey to the shimmering liquid platinum. Interestingly, the opaque on the Crackle didn't hold on the Crackle nearly as well. As soon as I set the heat gun going, a load of powder blew away. So that was quite interesting to me. And yeah, I think there is just a slight touch more interest with the translucent. They've got a bit more of a glow to them. But really, there's almost no difference over the Crackle between the opaque powders and those translucent embossing glazes. It might, well, that might change if one used this as a resist and started inking or spritzing over the top. Haven't done this one yet. So yeah, I'll finish off this and then it'll be close-up time. We are fully heated. So with the gesso, kind of no difference between whether you do it while the gesso is still wet or when the gesso has dried. That effect is pretty much the same. With the texture paste, it definitely makes a difference. So this is texture paste heated while it's still wet, and you get the bubbling and blowing up and the texture. And once it's set underneath and then you heat emboss, you get, as I say, that much flatter look, still obviously raised over the texture, but a much neater look, I suppose it is, as opposed to the textural one of that. Again, spraying, blending ink over the top of this, all completely possible, but a choosing between. And it doesn't have to be the Ranger texture paste. I've done this with a number of texture pastes in my time, and the bubbling seems to work with all of them. Certainly works with the Paper Artsy Grunge paste. And there's the difference between the subtle glow of just an embossing powder and the really full-on shimmer of a metallic embossing powder against those distress paint backgrounds. So adding texture and embossing over a background doesn't have to be on plain card. And then here, as I was saying earlier, it's really hard with the naked eye to tell the difference between the translucent embossing glazes and the opaque powders. There is a difference. I can see more of a glow on this one, really, overall. But that delicious close-up of that Crackle texture. And obviously, again, you could increase the contrast by spritzing something dark over the top of those. But I think we're going to leave that for another day. We're going to let these be backgrounds and stick to our easy embossing powder playtime for today. If you've enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up. And if you see the promote button, it would be lovely if you could encourage YouTube to share this with more people. If you're not already subscribed, we'd love to have your company on this creative journey, and look in the description below for the ingredients that I've been using today for this textured embossing powder playtime. Thanks so much for your company, and happy crafting all.